Helena and Patrick.
Great. Okay, thanks. Okay, I will just share my screen. Hopefully. There it is. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. So yeah, welcome to a Power BI dashboard template changed my life. So the objectives for this session, I'll just re-find my slide deck. There we go. So hopefully during this session...
Oh, just sorry, Helena. Patrick, can you see Helena's slides? I can't see.
No, it's fantastic. I can't see your screen.
Just try present now again. Just see if it's
Is it? Yeah, it's telling me it is.
It's presenting.
Okay.
Oh, no.
I am presenting. It says that is weird. Can you just see me then? You can't see my screen at all. It worked before, didn't it? When we tested it.
It did. I saw it come up on the screen.
Yeah. Okay, right. I've ended it, so I'm going to try again.
Should we try again? See if it comes up.
Okay.
Wonderful. Yes. There we go. Sorry, I'll drop off. Sorry.
No worries. Thanks for that. Great. So, the objectives for this session are to kind of understand why having a Power BI template was useful to me and our team, to kind of get a copy of the template into people's hands like a party bag, and get some hands-on experience of using it, and hopefully that might kind of spark some ideas for you of what you might want to kind of incorporate into your own templates or bits you can use in your own work, but also hopefully maybe it might inspire you to share any kind of Power BI templates or tips and tricks you have, because I think there's kind of a lot of potential to share kind of best practice amongst different trusts that are using Power BI. And we'll try and answer questions in the chat as we go. So yeah, do use the chat. Pasted some things in there already. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do before, I'm going to do a bit of an introductory presentation, but the main part of today's session is going to be kind of hands-on using the dashboard template, and because this is sort of the crux of the session is downloading the template and getting it open. If we can try and do that now, if there's any issues, then Patrick might be able to help you while I'm giving my intro chat. So there is a link to an unfinished dashboard file in the chat. It's a GitHub link. So hopefully if you click on that link, it will take you to a screen that looks like this. And you just need to click on the three dots and click download. And that should just download kind of one unfinished dashboard file that you can then open if you've got Power BI Desktop on your machine. So if you wouldn't mind having a go at that now, and then we can just try and troubleshoot any issues, and failing all else, we can email it to you if you would like. So if everyone could have a go at that now, I'll just check the chat. Oh, fab. Great. So I think everyone's done that. There we go. Great. So hopefully, I can't see, I'm not sure how many people we've got in the room. Okay. Oh, a few. Okay. So looks like most people are able to do that. Yeah. So yeah, if you have any issues, pop your email in the chat, and Patrick can email it to you. So on with the slideshow. Okay, so to kind of set the scene as to why this was useful to me. So I started as a divisional analyst, and I was kind of overwhelmed by the volume of KPI tracking requests that I got. I had a lot of stakeholders who all wanted to track a lot of KPIs, nothing particularly fancy or kind of clever, all sort of run-of-the-mill stuff, but just a huge volume of it, and always wanting it kind of split by different categories, and lots of like tables, line charts, SBC charts, that sort of thing. And so those sort of requests are really useful to that's what dashboards are kind of really useful for. And the main dashboarding platform that our trust had was Power BI. But another problem I had is I hadn't worked with Power BI before, and I didn't really get on with it that well. And I kind of felt like the things I was making in Power BI felt quite slow, and took me a long time to do, and felt like quite poor quality, and felt there was a lot of duplication. So my dashboards would get very large very quickly. And the data model would get quite messy. So this is kind of one example of a sort of less than optimal page that I'd made. So here's 3 different charts, one of which are aggregated by day, by week, by month. And if you kind of expand this out, so if you've got 10 KPIs, you want to aggregate them all by different kind of time periods. You want different chart types, so you want them in SPC and run chart and like heat map, for example, and then you want it kind of split by 4 different categories. Then you end up with a lot of charts, and you end up with a dashboard that has a lot of pages. It gets out of control quite fast. And this was an issue until the template came along. So one of my colleagues, Patrick, had taken the time to kind of think strategically about how to design a dashboard in the most useful and compact way. And a template is a common structure for dashboards to follow. So by this, we don't just mean like a background, although, I mean, it does have a background and a color scheme, but that's fundamentally not the main part of it. It has kind of visuals, measures, and parameters, and some bits of the data model already set up that already work for most use cases. So the practical part of this session is going to be about kind of how this plumbing works. But fundamentally, it allows you to not have to design each dashboard from scratch, and to kind of use a common structure to make what you need to make. And one of the main ways it does this is by the use of parameters. So there's a lot of different things that are parameterized in the dashboard. So for example, the date field is parameterized, so you can use the same chart to show data weekly, monthly, daily, yearly, or whatever other period you want to aggregate by. The measures, the KPIs themselves are parameterized, so you can show all of the different measures on the same charts. And then the kind of comparison fields and things you want to compare by are also parameterized, so you can split any of your KPIs kind of on the same chart by the same categories. And then it also has a structure, so you can kind of do this for several different charts on the same page. So that's just a little demo of that. So this is a way of squeezing those kind of 360 charts onto the same page, if you like, which kind of significantly cuts down the kind of initial setup of the dashboard. So here's a kind of video of how the basic structure looks to the end user. So all of the dashboards have this kind of common first 3 pages, this scorecard page, which shows all the KPIs in a table. Everyone loves having things in a table. And then we have a trends page for tracking over time, and showing SBC and heat maps that we saw on the previous page. And then there's also a comparison page that allows you to compare any of your KPIs across a whole bunch of different categories that you specify. And then these pages are just the kind of core structure of the dashboard. So they sort of, if you like, come as included when you set up a new dashboard. And then it enables you to kind of spend more time thinking about specific use cases. And we have this more resources section, which hopefully we'll show in a minute, where you can basically make bespoke pages for bespoke use cases. So to support a particular meeting, to support a particular stakeholder. And that's the kind of bit of the dashboard where you can bring kind of the less common requirements and less common asks into it, whilst covering all of those standard KPI tracking requests. Right, so the benefits of the template, I mean, it really increased the development speed, or it certainly increased my development speed by a long time. So I could do in a couple of hours what was previously taking me a week. It's become much easier to kind of hand over and maintain dashboards. So originally when I started, all of our dashboards kind of all looked a bit different or worked a bit different. Things were in different places on different dashboards, which meant if you were taking one over, it took you a lot of time to figure out kind of how it was structured. This structure, where we have a trends page and a compare page and a scorecard as the kind of base structure, seems to work for really diverse use cases. So kind of use it across all of our hospital divisions, sort of in ED, in diagnostics, outpatients, and even other things like, so now I work in a more data science role, and it actually works quite well for tracking performance of your machine learning models. And it frees up your time to kind of do more interesting work. So there's nothing particularly, clever about run charts and all of those basic KPI requirements. But being able to do them very quickly does free you up to be able to do more interesting stuff and more interesting analysis. Also, having the kind of standard way of structuring a dashboard has also been good for stakeholders. So it's actually increased the usage of our dashboards and means that the people generally know where to find stuff. And it's also a great knowledge sharing tool. So I've learned a lot from just playing around with the template and seeing how it works. Okay, right. So this next section, we're going to go into the code along. So there's various disclaimers before we start. So you'll need Power BI Desktop. So if you don't have Power BI Desktop, you can just watch along. And the target audience here is kind of those who have a bit of experience with Power BI but feel like they could be using it better. So if you're kind of a complete beginner, or if you're a complete expert, you're not the exact target audience. You might still get something out of it. But yeah, that's kind of where we're pitching it. So if you're a complete beginner and you do feel a bit lost, hopefully you'll still learn a couple of things, but just bear with us. And we're very happy to help you after the session as well. I'll pop our contact details in the chat. So don't worry too much if you get lost. And this is not necessarily the best way to structure a Power BI dashboard. It's just the best way that kind of we've come up with. So if you have a better way, please do share it, because we'd love to learn from you. And all of the data we are looking at and using this session is ED data, but it's completely fake and it has no relation to our real data whatsoever. Also, if you do get lost, the first 3 tabs of the file you downloaded are a user guide. So you can also work through this at your own pace. So I'd encourage you to check that out, because I've certainly found that quite useful. Okay, so I think I stop sharing.
Cool. Shall I take over?
Yeah, you take over.
Waiting for my cue. Hi everyone. So I'm going to take over for the practical portion of this workshop, which is going to go very smoothly, and there will be no hitches whatsoever, as always happens with live demos. So first, let's check that I can get my screen shared. Percent now. Window, Power BI, share. Okay, so first check. Can everyone just let me know if you can/can't see that? Can you see it, Helena? Cool. People said they can see it. Okay, so we're going to basically kind of progress through the process of taking essentially a blank template with some sample data loaded into it, and go through the process of what you do to kind of add your measures to the template and then wire them into the kind of pre-existing plumbing, which is what like the analysts that we have using the template already kind of do every time they start on your dashboards. This is the same process that anybody using the template goes through every time they start to use it. So everybody should have the template open on their screen, hopefully, and we're going to go in kind of small steps, and then I'm going to try and check in with people frequently to check that everyone's up to the same stage, and hopefully nobody will get left behind. If you do have any problems and you kind of lagging behind quite a lot or are stuck, then just pop a message in the chat and Helena will kind of come to your rescue, hopefully. So,
yeah, I'm still here. It just I was just trying to give you more screen space.
okay.
My microphone shut down. I will be in the chat.
Question: does this apply to import mode only? No, you can use this for any kind of data model. So kind of the remit of this template is really not the data modeling itself, although it does kind of promote and encourage a certain type of data model, which is just a general star scheme that's optimized for Power BI. But it's more about taking the data model and the measures and putting them into the pre-existing plumbing of the core visuals. So you can kind of do whatever you want with the data model, and that's a bit of a separate question. So just on that note, and you don't have to follow along with this step, so I'm just going to show you a second. We're going to look at the model view for a second. So this is the model view, which is kind of what the dashboard is built off. As we said before, it's loaded with pre-existing ED attendance data, which is completely fake. It's made using a Python package. So in terms of if you're picking up this template to use for yourself, then essentially the first stage is putting your own data in, and the basic kind of pattern is your data goes here, where this F_ attendances table is, the fact table for attendances. You would put your own data here, whatever that might be. So at its most simple level, you might just put in a flat fact table, which comes from whatever your data source is, whether that be direct query mode, SQL Server, an Excel file, whatever. You'd put that in here and then just hook it up to the relevant dimension tables. So we have a couple of kind of pre-built dimension tables that are just really to indicate how you might set it up within your own team. So generally you might have some standard dimensions that are used across a lot of dashboards, such as maybe specialty or age group. And what we would recommend if you're using it in a team would be to kind of preload those into the template, so people could just hook their data up to these pre-existing dimensions, and then it's standardized across everybody's dashboards. If these particular ones weren't relevant to your data, you could delete them and replace them with your own, and the ones that are more relevant to your team. So this calendar table is quite central to the dashboard, and it's created completely in DAX, although there are, of course, other ways to do it, and you might want to source it from your own data warehouse if you have a calendar dimension table. But again, the important thing is that everybody uses the same one, so that the template can operate in the same way, because the calendar fields are kind of parameterized throughout the template. So we've already hooked this up, but if you were doing this for yourself, you would plop your own data in here and just connect it from the relevant fields to the relevant dimension tables. The most important one being, as I say, the calendar table on a date field in your fact table. So just to point out, we've got a bunch of other tables over here that we might be wondering what they are. So these are kind of all the parameters and the existing workings of the template that make it work the way it does. So generally, you don't really need to touch these too much. They're just there in the background. So that being said, we're going to get on with the kind of follow along portion. So everybody should be up to this stage. So the first thing we're going to do is change the title of the report. So the title itself, this isn't a text box. This is linked to a measure, and this kind of is the first indication of how the report's parameterized. So we're going to update the title centrally once within a measure, and that's going to populate all of the different pages, the headers, the different pages of the report. So to do that, what we're going to do is come to our data pane on the right here, and we're going to expand this m_measures table. So this is our centralized measure table, which contains all of the measures in the report, whether that be kind of the metadata measures or the actual things that measure the KPIs and the data themselves. So I think it's kind of a key feature of the report to have a measures table centralized so that everything can be done in one place and kind of parameterized from there. So we're going to open up the subfolder, which is _report information, which contains a few various bits of kind of metadata about the report itself. And we're going to pop open this title measure just by clicking on it. So having opened up the title measure, everybody should see this formula bar at the top of the report, just underneath the toolbar, which should be a familiar sight to anybody that uses Power BI a lot. And again, this is going to be a key thing that we use throughout the workshop, so just make sure you can see that now. So what we're going to do is change the title of the report to something, to whatever you want. Maybe put my workshop dashboard. You can call it whatever you like. We're going to change that title. That's a little bit too long for that text box. Press enter or click the commit button, and I'm just going to make that a little bit wider so we can see that. So if we have a quick look now at the different pages, click on scorecard, for example, you can see that that has kind of populated the header area on all of the different pages. So do once centrally and it populates the different pages, which is kind of the ethos of the template. Just a quick note as well, as I flick back to the home page, we've stripped out any kind of specific branding that we use within our team, for example, like the background, the logos, although we have left a bit of a background in the pages, so they look a bit less bare. So the idea is you could create your own background in PowerPoint or whatever, export it as a PNG, and then just apply it to the pages so that it, make it look and feel your own. So is everybody, well, if anybody's had any difficulties getting to this point, got stuck, just raise it in the chat and Helena will give you a hand. Helena's got some helpful hints in the chat. So we're going to start populating this report now with our measures, which is kind of the meat of the workshop. So if we flick to our scorecard page now, we can see that just to make it easier for kind of first time users of the template, we've got some placeholder measures, which we've called measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these just have static numbers in them. So what we've also done is populated the first measure to show you kind of the pattern of what we're about to do. So if everybody could not follow along for a second, I'm just going to show you visually how this kind of links together. So the first of our 6 measures is called attendances, and it measures the number of attendances in the time period. So the first place that this is defined, essentially this is attendances measure, is in our measures table and in this second subfolder called scorecard measures. And you don't have to keep the folder called scorecard measures, but it's generally helpful to have your measures subdivided in some way to make it clear where the core ones are, and you can do whatever makes sense for you. So we'll see the first measure here, which we've renamed already, called attendances. So if we click on that, then we'll see our formula bar pop up again, and we've named the measure and put in the DAX that tells the model how to calculate the value of it, which in this case is just to count the rows of our fact table. So take the fact table, count the rows, each row corresponds to an attendance. So this gives us the number of attendances. So you define your measure first centrally here, and that already will put into all of the charts, wire it into all the charts, but we need to give it a display name. So to do that, we come to our first kind of parameter in the template, and that is this one, quite an important one down at the bottom here, p_measure. The p meaning parameter and our measure parameter. So if we open up, and this is called a field parameter, by the way, if anyone wants to look up the Power BI kind of lingo for it. So if we click on just the top level p_measure in the data pane itself, it brings up this bit of DAX. And this construct, I think of it as a bit of like a switchboard. This basically lets you put in whatever measures you've defined in the measures table, like as many as you want, and assign them to a display name, which will be given to the user. So that could be something that's a bit friendlier than the name that you've given the measure in the measures table itself. So as you can see here, we've popped our attendances measure in, and we've given it a nice display name, which is attendances. And that's actually the main plumbing you have to do to get it to populate the dashboard. So I'm just going to show you what that's done just from those 2 steps. We've got the attendances measure in the scorecard, which we can aggregate by different granularities. We can break that down on a weekly basis, daily, by financial year, etc., etc. And you can do that on your own report if you want to follow along with that. If we flick to the trends page, we can see that in the drop down we have our attendances measure as well as our placeholder ones, and we can break that down by some legend field, and that will just work straight away. We can also break the trends page down into a weekly basis, and again you can try that yourself, and we can view it, for example, as an SPC chart. Because we're in edit mode, you'll have to hold down Control and then click this SPC button, which will give you the attendances measure as an SPC. And then finally, if we look at our compare page, you'll see that attendances is right there for us to compare across whatever we want to compare it across. So we're going to do the same now with a second measure. So we're going to put a measure in for 4-hour breaches. So generally you would have to kind of come up with the definition of this, the DAX for this yourself in conjunction with the data model. But in order to aid this kind of workshop, Helena's going to paste the DAX for this in the chat now. So we're going to go back to our measures table here, go into scorecard measures, and we're going to open up our placeholder measure number 2, which will again bring up this just placeholder formula. So into this, we're going to paste our 4-hour breaches piece of DAX. So again, this is just telling our model to look at the 4-hour breach flag, which is a 1 or a 0 in the data model, and just sum it, which will give us, in the time period, the number of 4-hour breaches. So if we pop that in and just press enter, then you'll see that already it just springs into all the visuals, the core visuals in the template. So we've got our number of 4-hour breaches in the scorecard, and if we went onto the trends or compare pages, we would also see it there. So the second step that we want to do is to give it a display name, a friendly display name for the user. So just to check, has everybody managed to put in their DAX successfully for the 4-hour breaches measure? Just pop in the chat if you haven't. So assuming everyone's done that, we're going to go to our p_measure, our measure parameter again, and we're going to give it a display name here. So you can see kind of the pattern is that each line is one of the measures that we've put in. So we can see on the right here that because we took the place of one of our placeholder measures, the 4-hour breaches measure is in it already, which is great. So all we need to do now is replace this red string on the left here to give it a display name. So you might want to call this something different to the measure itself if you've given the measure a bit of a kind of more technical name, but in this case the measure name is quite friendly anyway, so I'm just going to copy and paste that, which is great. So paste over this red string on the left, press enter on that, and we can see that we've just wired in our very first measure into the template, and that's actually populated all of the core visuals for us already. So we'll have a quick click through and check that that's worked. So on our scorecard, we can see our 4-hour breaches measure. Great. Break that down by different granularities. If we go to our trends page, we can change the drop down to 4-hour breaches, which it did do, because we can see the y-axis scale's changed, and we can split that by some field of our choosing. And if we go to the, just to point out as well, if we want to view this as a heat map, for example, we can control and click on the heat map. And again, the 4 breaches, it's all just populated for us. Just order that. Don't know. Okay, so we'll go to the compare page and finally see that we can compare 4 breaches. So if we click on that column header, it will then order our categories and we can compare it across this measure. So that is kind of the core cycle that you would go through in order to use this dashboard. You'd, after doing your data modeling, which is a bit of its own issue, it's just define the measures, pop them into this measure parameter, and that is the bulk of it done, although there are a few other things that we'll touch on now. So we'll put one more measure in to just kind of drive this home, which is going to be 4-hour performance percentage. So Helena's going to pop the DAX for this in the chat now. We're going to go up to our measures table and open up placeholder measure number 3, and we'll just paste this in. So kind of an interesting and important feature of what we've done for this measure is that we've reused the previous measures that we defined. So that kind of makes the lineage of the measures a lot more kind of centralized and streamlined and modular in a way. So you just define what an attendance is once, or a 4-hour breach, and then reuse that measure in kind of more derived measures. And then, you know, if you need to change the definition of a 4-hour breach, you can just do that centrally and that will all compute. So we'll see that our measure 3 has gone to 0, and that's just because it's trying to display that decimal as a whole number. So what we'll do to fix that is just go to our performance measure, which should already be open actually, and click this in the formatting area of the toolbar, click this percentage button, and we can see that with it being fake data that's auto generated, it's very uniform. So we have quite a uniform performance of about 38 or 39%, but that's all worked. So just to close the cycle again, we're going to go to our p_measure, give that a nice display name. So maybe in this case, you can either just paste the measure in, or you might want to call it something more specific for the user, like performance 4-hour. So just to point out, these two don't have to be the same. The display name can be something else. We press enter on that, and we have our third measure in all of the core visuals. So that is essentially the cycle of what you do to add measures to the template, and that is pretty much, you then just all the placeholder measures, you delete them or overwrite them. So just to one last kind of tidying up point, in order to get the SPC chart to work properly, if you use SPC charts kind of extensively in your team, an SPC chart has a lot of different parameters that are kind of defined per measure. For example, the target, the y-axis limits, many different things. So in order to manage this, you don't have to follow along with this bit. I can just show you. We've made kind of a measure lookup table. So you just put the display names of the measures on the left here, and then you can define a lot of different things, such as the definition of the measure, all of the SPC parameters, such as the chart type, the improvement direction, etc. And this metadata table is pre-wired into the SPC visual. So by just updating your metadata for the measure here once, it gets the SPC chart to behave as you would like it to. So just to quickly show you how we do that. In the data pane, you have this measure metadata table, and you have your 3 dots. So we'll click on that and edit query, which will bring up your Power Query editor. So you should have something that looks. Oh wait, I can see that that's not sharing the Power Query editor because it's sharing the specific window. Let me just reshare my screen. Window, share. All right, I only have a couple of minutes left. So you should have a window that looks like this if you are following along. So essentially, if you click the cog next to the source icon, it brings up just an Excel-like interface where you can just edit the metadata for your measures centrally. So, for example, we might add in for our breaches measure and for our performance measure, might give them a definition, number of for our breaches, do it more detailed, and well, percentage of that left under 4 hours, however you want to define it, and then just show on the SPC improvement direction, the performance and improvement corresponds to an increase in that value, so we change that to increase. Breaches and improvement corresponds to a decrease, and attendance is also a decrease. So you can update this metadata to your heart's content to make it all work properly. And then doing that process just once for each new measure will get the SPC chart to operate correctly. So don't worry if you didn't follow along with that bit then, but that's just to show you a little bit of tidying up that you have to do after defining your measures to get everything to work properly. And the final thing is just showing this metric definitions page. Oh, it's not showing the right screen. Final thing. Yep, this metric definitions page, by populating that metadata table, it has also populated this for us. So it goes with the ethos of the dashboard, which is just define things centrally once, whether it be the measure or the metadata table, and it will populate all the relevant core things in the dashboard for you. So then you can spend your time doing more interesting and fun things. Cool. So I hope everyone managed to follow along with that and got something out of it. Should I briefly hand back to Helena?
Could do, yeah. Just for wrapping up, I was just busy trying to answer. Sorry, Marianne, I didn't see your question in the Q&A. But yeah, we do normally use a template file, a PBIT file. We just wanted for this thing, we want it to be preloaded with data, so that's why we've used kind of an unfinished file. But there is a PBIT file version in the GitHub repository that I've posted the link to. But yeah, that is a good way of like sharing things without the data layer. So that is a good question. And yeah. So thanks very much for attending. And hopefully that may have been useful to you. But yeah, do get in touch if you have any further questions. And yeah, and if you've got kind of something better that you use or something interesting to share, then also please do share that with us, because we're interested in learning from other people too. But yeah, that is about everything.